You ask questions, and we'll answer them. This is the Ask DVCC Fit and Active Show. Hey, this is Mark and Steve from the DVCC, and this is the Ask DVCC Seniors Fit and Active Show. So, today we have got some questions that we are going to answer. They're specifically sent in by people that are over 60, so that's people that are interested in our Fit and Active show. And like we always say, if you're up north or you're somewhere abroad and you can't get to any of the centres, do not feel like you cannot send a question in.
Sure.
We're very happy to answer anything we can and help as many people as we can, whether you come to any of the 5 DVCC centres or not. So, first question is...
I don't know what I should or shouldn't be able to do at my age.
A very interesting one, and I think this is a topic we're probably harping on about a lot, but I think what you do not want to do is look at perhaps the average for the people of your age, or look at what the government says you should be able to do, because I've seen so many 70-year-olds that can literally run rings around 35-year-olds. I've seen loads of 35-year-olds that have the capabilities physically of 70-year-olds. So I think that's the first thing, first and foremost, is there is no right or wrong amount of what you should be able to do, but I like the principle of always thinking you can always do more. You should always be able to do more.
It's about progressing
never settling.
Yourself, isn't it?
I think that's the most important thing, and that's something we constantly think about, is never settling. So never thinking that, oh, I'm past it, I can't do... Who says that you should not be able to do 50 press-ups? Of course, if you're not going to be able to be, if you were very, very fit and active in your 20s, did a lot of exercise, really worked hard at your fitness, then it's going to be harder as you get older to be as fit and compare yourself to you at 20. But you don't need to do that. You can be comparing yourself to yesterday and the day before. And I think the key is the progress.
And also, a little side note on that is comparing yourself to norms isn't necessarily the best thing to do. So testosterone markers, so what your testosterone as a man should be, has been decreased over the last, 20 or 40 years, because the average has decreased. So you could be average on that marker, but that's going to be far less than someone at 40 years ago. So it's like Stephen says, it's about progressing on what you can achieve and not settling for, oh, I'm good for 70. Well, why not be better than you were yesterday and better than you were yesterday? All right, so next question is...
I have always eaten gluten or bread, but my daughter now tells me I shouldn't. Why?
We have been talking about gluten-free from our very beginning of being personal trainers. So when we first learned about it, we started talking about it with clients and started attributing it to stomach upsets, people who didn't feel very good after eating bread, that sort of thing. Now, if you are, as you are for the Seniors Fit and Active, you're obviously over 60, you have had no negative side effects from it, you've been tested by your doctor and all of your markers, your health markers are good, then no, you shouldn't stop eating bread because it's been doing nothing, it's not done anything bad for you, and all of those tests and all of those health markers show it. If you've never been tested, your health markers have never been tested, then you need to get that done. But also, if you've never not had bread, there's an interesting one as well, because often you can just get rid of bread or gluten for 2 weeks, see how you feel amazing. Clearly, gluten is not for you.
Well, it's like our grandfather. He has been told by his doctor not to eat anything with sugar in.
Yeah.
Anything at all. He's 91. He's fitter and more active than many people 30 years younger than him, and he's 91, yet he will not now have an ice cream or anything like that. Not that he had many of those in the first place anyway, otherwise he wouldn't be so fit and active at 91. But he's now not having any because he's been told by this expert not to have any, otherwise he's going to get diabetes. But he's 91, so that's not the right advice for him, because everything to do with his health is really good. So it's the wrong thing to say to him, but he's been told by this blanket prescription that, no, that's bad, don't have it.
So, hopefully that answers that. We're kind of passionate about that. Next question is...
I watched your video on hemochromatosis, but what is it?
Okay, so we obviously didn't do a clear enough job on explaining it. We will give it more explanation. I think there was a bit of confusion actually over the fact that potentially you might have felt that you could only get it done in London, the test in London. That's not the case. What we were saying is we went to London to get predictive testing, which generally you can only get done privately. Well, in fact, you can only get done privately, and London effectively is the place to go unless you're... For us, it's closest and easiest for predicting enough of the different tests. So that's where we found out we had hemochromatosis. However, what you can do is go to your doctor, your local GP, and you can ask to be tested for hemochromatosis. Simple blood test, a blood draw, and then they send it away. Now, what hemochromatosis is and why we are harping on about it is, I'll let Stephen...
It's basically for when you're genetically unable to get rid of iron. So you end up... every day we take an iron to our body from loads of different... From cooking pots, from drinking water, everything. We take an iron, okay? Now, if you're not able to get rid of that iron, it can build up, and that can cause a lot of problems, heart issues, cancer things like they're linking it to a lot of different things nowadays. But what happens is it takes quite a few years for that iron to accumulate and to start causing you problems. So that's why they often say
like 40 to 50
40,
years.
50, 60 is when you actually notice the impact of not being able to get rid of that iron. So all hemochromatosis is, and like Mark said, the genetic test is very simple, blood test, but even simpler than that is just to ask the GP to test your iron levels.
Yeah.
And they won't have that much of it. There's no issue with it because, it's a legitimate thing, but you'll know if you have it, because if you are 30 and you have iron that's above normal, then okay, we need to investigate further. Then they'll just do the genetic test. And it's just may as well be done. And, we spoke to a guy in the hairdressers just about it just the other day, because he was actually a twin, and it was very interesting that they hadn't been tested for that, and it may not have been, but why not get tested? And so we just feel like we should talk about it.
And we're going to keep talking about it.
It would have had such an enormous negative impact on our lives in 30 years' time. And we think, and we try physically to do everything we can to be as healthy as possible.
Cool. So, last question, and the last question is...
How do I stop myself from getting osteoporosis?
Good question. So, we've talked about this before. Resistance exercise is very, very important. As you get older, even more so than when you're 20, at 60 you want to be doing resistance training. That's lifting things under resistance, doing movements under resistance. You want to be progressively trying to get stronger, progressively increasing those things. That increases your muscular density. It increases or helps with keeping your bones strong. Is one of the major factors to preventing osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that goes along with that, and actually it's just been in the Daily Mail recently...
Which makes it true.
Which makes it 100% true, is vitamin D3. Because to absorb calcium, you have to have adequate levels of vitamin D3. So actually, whilst it's summer, we've had some decent weather recently, you'll be getting more D3 than you would normally. But during the winter months, you'll be getting very, very little. So supplementing with vitamin D3 will also help. Because often, and it was mistakenly thought that you just had to take a lot of calcium in, so people would try and drink a lot of milk, actually, which nutritionally doesn't have that much calcium in compared to, say,
broccoli,
dark green vegetables, exactly, broccoli, kale, things like that. So you're much better having green vegetables than you are drinking milk, but you have to have the right amount of vitamin D3 to be able to absorb the calcium. So supplementing every day with maybe 5,000 IUs of D3 during the colder winter more months should see you that nice and adequately. If you can't, go and get a test and know exactly what your
D3 always get tested. That's one of our things. Always get your D3 tested. Any of these things we talk about, you can ask your doctor for them. You might have to push them, but you are allowed to get those tested. So, that is all for today. Question of the day is, have you ever had your vitamin D3, your iron levels tested? Have you ever been to the doctor and had them tested? I'm interested, because obviously this audience is going to be slightly older, and you have probably had more tests over the years. I'm interested, have you ever had them tested? Comment in any of the boxes below and let us know. As always, send us your questions. This is Mark and Steve from the DVCC. Bye-bye.